Welcome to the Poetry Flash reading series. So, I'm Joyce Jenkins, as most of you know, Poetry Flash editor and director. Today we are honored and delighted to present the book launch for Gail Rudd Entrekin. Reading with Sonoma County Poet Laureate, straight from Santa Rosa, Elizabeth C. Herron. So I just wanted to remind you to please visit poetryflash.org to check out our book reviews, interviews, and more, and to find out upcoming news about our events and events all over California. And to tell you that there is a book review that we were lucky enough to post on poetryflash.org about Elizabeth's new book. So please check that out. And we've reviewed Gail in the past and hope to in the future, and maybe we can even get a review of this new book. That would be great. We'd be thrilled. If you would like to receive emails about our events and aren't already on our email event alert list, please sign up at poetryflash.org or on our analog clipboard, which is right over here, and then you won't have to even bother with the website, but it's right there. So we have copies of these two beautiful new books right here on the table, available for purchase. We can take cards, and it's a veritable, delectable smorgasbord, literary smorgasbord. So, and speaking of smorgasbords, after the reading, we have snacks and wine and sparkling water at the back of the room. Thanks to Harold Adler and the Art House Gallery, to Monroy and Stephen Bunza, and from Poetry Flash for their help and support, and Steve Kay, our videographer. Videos of our events are posted on the Poetry Flash YouTube channel. So, here to introduce the poets, Richard Silberg, Associate Editor.
Hi everybody. As Joyce told you, we have two poets, Elizabeth Herron and Gail Rudd Entrekin. Elizabeth is going to be reading first, and this is actually her fourth book. She's the she's the poet laureate of Sonoma County, and there is a map of Sonoma County in the book here. And at the center is Una Pais, the Sonoma mountain upon which Coyote dwelt when he created the world with a feather. The book is titled In the Cities of Sleep. And that gives you a sense of the dream quality. There's a dream quality. This is a planetary book. And it's talking about what we're going through, the climate change, our environmental crisis, but it sees, which is simply the case, that everything is interrelated. Everything is unified, so that the book is organized into before, between, and hereafter. And it has a number of long poems that combine science like astronomy and geology with astrology, with native mythology, traditional myths like Coyote. And it creates a planetary music that is painful. The planet is suffering, but it's a hopeful book. It ends, its hope is simply life itself. There's a poem next to the last poem with birds in a tree, and it ends, they sing, they sing. So let's give her a warm welcome, Elizabeth C. Herron.
It's wonderful to be here. It's really wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to hear such a to have my book received in that way is just very touching and important to me, because it is a book. We all poetry books, open it anywhere, right? Open anywhere and read. And I wanted to write a book that was like that, open anywhere, but that also had a before, a between, and a hereafter. And so I will read from that book, but I want to first say thank you so much for inviting me and hosting this fabulous event, and how nice it is to see all these faces coming out for poetry on a Sunday afternoon. I want to begin with the Deer Chant, because I think of poetry really as a kind of, as Richard said, it's music, and chants and songs were the first poems. So this is the poem I like to use as an invocation to change consciousness. So we start where we are, and we descend. We move out of the ordinary space into a deeper, less distracted place. So this is the Deer Chant. My bones lie under the tanbark tree, where she put them. To ride the winter rain, the summer sun in secret, she put them there. My bones. Little deer, little doe, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your hooves their dancing spirit, bring your legs their agile leaping, little deer, little doe, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your spine its supple curving, bring your throat its huffing story, little deer, little doe, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your ribs their beating heart, bring your heart its singing blood, bring your blood its song of rivers, little deer, little doe, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your ribs their bleeding heart. Bring your heart its singing blood, bring your blood its song of rivers, little deer, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your lungs their humming breath, bring your breath its exultation. Let the creeks give you welcome, let the grass give you welcome, let the woods give you welcome, little deer, little doe, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your tail its nimble signal, bring your skull its shaman vision, little deer, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your hooves their dancing spirit, little deer, little doe, come back to your bones and bless them, back to your bones and bless them. Bring your spirit to these bones and come to me. Woman, since you call me in the manner that is proper, with the wind at your back and the fire at your hearth, back to my bones, to bless them, back to my bones, bless them, woman, since you call me, I will come. Little dear, little doe, we give you thanks, we give you welcome. Little dear, little doe, we give you thanks, we give you welcome. This woman is honored, we here are honored. Leaf. You could mistake it for a moth, that laurel leaf, dried in a half spiral around the axis of its midrib, caught on the fence and fluttering reddish in October sun. Easy to think, moth, the way they alight and stay, wings up, quivering, though you know it's a leaf, flickering in the current of air coming up from the creek. What stays, remembered later? The muddy smell of water in the winter ditch, the rough song of the fox at dusk, the light on a leaf, pieces alive in you that make you what you are, not your childhood or your illness or your degrees, not things known and visible, but this moth leaf you pause to watch going out the gate, the quickness of it, how very small it is, dry and half as wide as the cat's ear, that same cinnamon when light shines through a leaf, your life in it, fleeting and insignificant and privately beautiful. What is in your body rises out of darkness and earth to meet its fate. The leaf, too, had a song, vibrating beyond the human ear, heard by bees, spiders, and birds. There, on the fence, it made something large, something huge around itself. Thank you. How am I doing with the mic? Is this a little bit better? Then I don't have to lean down so much. This book, In the Cities of Sleep, is dedicated to my beloved Onopais, Sonoma Mountain, and the Atascadero whose soil and water smell of home, that muddy smell. And it has a dedication, not a dedication, but two little quotes to start it. Ladybug, ladybug, fly away home. Remember that one? Your house is on fire, your children will burn. And from Greta Thunberg, I want you to act as if the house was on fire, because it is. From before. Solastalgia. Some of you know that term now. It's a kind of a longing and a sadness for home even when you're there because of the way things are changing. Once we were earth, was beautiful, was water, flowers, under sea, in forest, even here, blossom and bee all shaped in lovely, and dancing in flit and suck and honey, and languid-limbed we brought forth, and died back in our season, and lived again in the long line of mother to mother, earth, to seed, to flame of spring. In balance did we, in balance and beauty, once we were, was beautiful. I know I'm going to read this one, but not quite yet. I like that Richard got into a report and last report, two sections of the book. Report is from between and last report. No, wait, is that right? Report is from before, and last report is the end of between. And they're related, and I wrote them over quite a long period of time by following the daily reports of what was going on with wind patterns and wave patterns and politics, which comes, the second last report has a lot, more, not a lot, but it has references to the human realm that are very minor in the first report, because I really wanted to share the world that I was living in of interrelated natural systems continuously unfolding and becoming. So report actually begins with February, the moon of the long snow, wind from the northwest. In the bowl of the Big Dipper, the lesser lion's diamond appears, faded, slightly ragged-maned, under a full moon, ascending over Unapa'is, where Coyote made the world with a feather. The wind blows east across the San Andreas Fault. Clouds gather behind the plum boughs. In the crevices of the body, petals open and fall. Mountains, full moon, haiku of the hips. Mars rising at 4 a.m. follows Venus across the heavens. High over the mountain where a black-tailed doe steps quietly into the dark trees. It's a long poem, but I thought I might just read a little bit of it here and there. In rest, like the space between stars or heartbeats, uncertainty hinges there. Coyote waves his feather wand. Venus rises at 6 a.m., petals open. The moon, a raucous blare, moves west. Blue salt, blue dusk, blue lake of longing. Temperatures over the region drop to 30 degrees in the dawn low. Venus, her crevices effaced by distance, closes her lamp against the wind, though she does not waver through the long day. A thin confetti of petals below the apple tree. A little bit more from report. Road closures throughout the Redwood Empire. Deer shelter under new sprigs of willow. Lows in the 40s. Pockets of cold dropping the heart to sub-zero of the season. The bright Capella de Auriga, the charioteer, high in the northwest, his thighs gripping the sky, hands on the empty reins, briefly shares the heavens with Jupiter and Mars. Venus rises early, settles back to a clear sky as the heart surges seaward in moon-pulled darkness. The Milky Way ribbons behind mostly cloudy skies, hearts humming all night. The lovers listen for rain, blessed by the long bones of darkness, a stipple of stars behind closed lids. I want to read a poem that Gail published in Canary. It's called Extinction. I don't know if I have it marked. Extinction, here it is. Paul Shepard was a an academic of sorts, a kind of a wild card. He called himself the first human ecologist, and he taught down at Pomona. And he said that the distress, the anxiety that we feel, that we think has something to do with something wrong with us or something missing in ourselves, as I put it, was actually the sense of something missing because of our lost companions. For Paul Shepard, extinction. Even cold erodes, and the ice that held itself in glacial cleaving grows eager to lie down in the sea, where the great bears will finally sleep, sliding quietly into the depths. Their bones roll the bottom in layers of darkness. What is left, besides light descending into blue shadows, the billowing curtains of salt, the slow heft of the sea? How can we let what is lost settle of its own weight into the secret grief, the emptiness we mistake for something missing in ourselves? My concern about climate came after about a decade of doing watershed restoration work, and then realizing that climate was the primary issue threatening all species all over the planet. And we see that unfolding now, but at the time it wasn't so visible. And so a large part of the book really has to do with what's going on around us as we kind of live through a long period of denial and have not put the pieces together, like particularly around, but now there's so much more understanding about climate migration and violence, that the violence that's occurring in various parts of the world is so much related to resources and the weather. So I thought I would read 38, While Bombs Fell. 38. This is a little bit awkward. This first issuing of my book, the book was late because of cover stock shortages. And so the publisher sent me, so that I'd have something to read at the first scheduled reading, I sent me the spiral-bound book, and I got it. I've been using it because I've got my markers in it, but actually it's a little awkward because the spiral doesn't work as well as a book. So this is While Bombs Fell. For weeks while bombs fell in Aleppo and rockets exploded the dark and birds flew blind from the trees, you dreamed of books, the entire library of human history afloat on the ocean. The birds, thrown upward in the flare, balanced on the explosion's apex of air till their wings fell away from their bodies. As the pages floated away from their bindings, soaked in salt, words without context. Here, Hannibal's army riding elephants over the Alps. There, Hildegard von Bingen's musical notations. 1,000 Americans died of drug overdose in those 2 weeks, while the bombs dropped over Syria and the birds plummeted soundlessly with only an explosion of feathers. Their wings sailed on the turbulence, then fluttered down to rubble and dust. The hands fell from the needles like the wings off a bird. The pages sailed away, balanced on the current and salt of the tide before they sank. How cunning, you said when you woke. The way things come apart, the way they change from something to nothing. Thank you. I'll switch gears for just one poem and then come back. Trust. This one was picked up by Penn and put in the Oakland Penn anthology that came out a few years ago, and I like this poem. Having no skin, I fell in love with the sea. Amniotic beginnings, blood harmonies, tides, tears, all the while the moon rising and falling, gathering and loosing its light. Was it having no arms and so unable to hold what I loved? No voice was something else to do with listening. The creeks, trees, lonely old stones, deer like that heavy antlered buck startled into the dense woods, and the fields, the wild grass, the air humming, crickets, cicadas, bees, they were my voice. The others, I loved their constancy, how it received me, how it endured, even in my absence. Words came late, turned back into prayers. Forget all this. I'm only trying to say, I too fell in love with this world speechlessly. I too offer only this blunt hunger, this mute and mortal longing. Winter Pilgrims. I had been reading a book I just happened to stumble on, visiting some friends and perusing their library, and it was about theater, and it was about the revival of this particular kind of theater that was going on in Eastern Europe, where theater itself was viewed as a kind of ceremony, and the audience was part of it. And it really reminded me of some of that early work of the anthropologists that I'm trying to think now. What's his last name? The anthropologist who named the liminal state as the transitional state that occurs in ceremony, where we shift from our known identity and we become something without an identity. And out of that place, something emerges, something new emerges. And he was really fascinated by that. Frederick Turner. So I remember that really stuck in my mind, and I thought these people were doing something similar with theater. So I'm not quite sure how all that fits with this poem called Winter Pilgrims, but except that one of the quotes from the book was, "The form of a pilgrimage is makeshift." And that's somebody named Ronald Grimes. First were the boats, rafts, dories, even an inner tube in the Mediterranean, a boy washed up face down in Greece, innumerable rescues and many too late, bodies floating like fallen feathers. The diaspora of the 21st century begins to jumble. Iraq, Syria, Sudan, Afghanistan, Nigeria, they come in waves over land and water. I wanted to write about them, the refugees, though no one wants to call them that. Refugees have rights. Migrants are flightless birds, spoiled fruit, parts of broken promises, pressed between countries, between civil collapse and the loss of arable land. I saw them on the television in the Nissan sales and service lobby with the sound off. Thousands gathered in the winter woods with their meager consolation of thin jackets and small fires and thin blue tents, the same blue tents we see along our freeways where P2 meth users huddle against the sear of uselessness, discarded lives in blue tents everywhere, here and there, in the winter woods, without food, with snow the only water. I saw them on the TV with the sound off. Tired of waiting, my car still not ready, I walked through November's dusk to the closest coffee shop, a Starbucks, as the tipped cup of the moon came up above the neon strip of Auto Row. There she is, I thought, the silver lady, pouring her light on the busy street, on the blue tents by the overpass, and on him, the boy with the animal ears cap I'd seen on TV in his father's arms, facing a wall of razor wire. I wanted to write about them, to write from one human to another about those people in the forest. An infant who died of exposure is buried there, an Assyrian man who drowned in the border river. There were others, too. The silver lady spilled her cup on their graves days later. Later, her light floods the woods, floods over the snow stained by their pilgrimage, and over the abandoned debris, the residue of their defeat, evidence of their presence and their departure. Could you say, in a manner of speaking from the heart, that now those woods are a makeshift sacred ground? I wanted to write about them, our brothers and sisters seeking milk and honey, or just a job and a plate of crappy food and a place to sleep, or just to get out of the killing cold. I wanted to write about the blue tents, to say those people matter. I wanted to mark the time and place, mine walking to Starbucks, and theirs on the border of Poland and Belarus, and in the no man's land beside the freeway, all of us under the same silver lady. I wanted to say these people are strangers only because we have yet to recognize ourselves. Thank you. Thank you. Time is running close, I think, here, so I thought maybe I'd read one more poem and then let Gail come up and enchant us. So, well, maybe I'll read two. I'll read Safe Harbor, and then I'll read Meanwhile Music. The older cat still manages to jump onto the bed, though he topples on the rough sea of the humped quilt and stranded pillows, where you propped your left knee over your right, another for your shoulder. The cat settles between us, tucking his nose into the black tip of his tail. Last night's rain still falls, one drop at a time from the overhanging branches. Here's the thing, the cat says. My branch of the evolutionary tree, he lifts his head to let you scratch his chin. Our little sea with its safe harbor. The waters of the world are all connected as the forests with their now famous mycorrhizal web. The Japanese fisherman hauls in his catch as a child slips overboard in the Mediterranean. A gray whale glides south through a school of microplastic, mouth open, trusting. A 60-year-old albatross flies 10,000 miles to dance and lay her egg on Midway Island. Her chick feeds on cigarette filters found in the dunes. From the rigging of an oil platform, a man climbs down, turning his chapped face from the North Sea wind. Across the small chaos of our bed, the cat stretches one paw toward you, closes his eyes, and sleeps. Meanwhile, music. Tree to tree the birds fly to perch and sing amid the sway and swing of spring's busy wind, while wars go on, while the sea rises and the ice melts. In the midst of life, narrowing to the onyx box, the house of Anubis side by side with the house of music, sun blesses the breakfast table. All is perishing, and yet they sing, they sing. Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure to read to you.
Our next reader is Gail Rudd Entrekin. This is her 6th book, Walking Each Other Home. And if she's also editor of Canary, as Elizabeth, an environmental magazine and a number of anthologies. Now, if Elizabeth's book is a planetary book, Gail's book is an intensely personal book. But what connects them for me is the beautiful, buoyant spirit of the poets who wrote them. Now, this book is based on a marriage, and a marriage in which the husband, Charles, is diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia. That's a sad mouthful, and Parkinson's. But the book is dedicated Charles, ever and always. So that that almost says it all. But there's among much else, there's a lot of humor in this book. There's a creation myth. God is a she, of course, and after dealing with the obstreperous animals that insist on eating each other and the obstreperous people, God wanders off to see what else there is around. There's a poem about the birth of a child, maybe the very one here today, and the mother, I think I may be, forgive me if I'm misquoting this, but the mother has a dream in which she's delivering a dish and wakes up to deliver the strudel, whom we hear. But this, for me, the emotional center is the love poems. It's about 40 years together of what they had, the flame of youth and love, and what is continuing. So let's bring her up here and give her a warm welcome. Gail Rudd Entrekin.
So you did that pretty well. That was pretty much I wasn't going to read the funny ones because I don't have enough time for all of them, but I just want to put this book a little bit into context. This is a sort of a resolution, coming to terms with the questions of my last two books, Rearrangement of the Invisible and Change Will Do You Good, both which were full of questions about how to deal with change, the changes that you choose, and then often find that you have a lot of sadness as you go forward with this change over the thing you've left behind, as well as the excitement of the change, and also the changes that you don't choose that happen to you. And those were difficult issues throughout my life. I was always I always had a very hard time accepting change, and I think a lot of people are like that, but all my friends seem to notice it about me, so it must have been stronger than for most. So I think that's why it was always an issue. In this book, Walking Each Other Home, the last 7 years in which I was writing this, I was trying to come to terms with changes that I didn't want and that I don't have any control over, and come to peace with the things that you can't choose. By the way, I wanted to thank everybody before I started. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much to Poetry Flash and to the Art House, and especially to Lawrence Chernell, my publisher over there in the blue jacket, who's just been a terrific human being. So this poem starts with a poem that was near the end of my last book, and I use it as a preface to the new book to sort of give you a sense of where I was coming from 7 years ago. Chronic lymphocytic leukemia. When the monster grabbed him up, tossed him back into its mouth, we had been swimming along holding hands, and I didn't let go. Flew up, dripping, and dropped beside him in the dark and foreign place where there were others dimly swimming for their lives. And there were teeth that grazed our skins now and then as we lay very still, our hope ballooning, rising up into the sinuses of the creature intermingled with our fear, so that both rose equally and were, we prayed, equally compelling. But the truth we knew was that the beast was dumb and barely knew we were there. Every day it tested its spikes against our naked, fragile bodies, some days teasing us by tipping forward, almost letting us roll out into the frothy sea. But most days we lay still, read medical books, listened to the messages of friends, sending love and encouragement from faraway places where life went on in warm kitchens and the linens were clean and dry. Finally, the thing decided not to decide, let us wash out with the tide. We are swimming again, and the ocean is very blue, but there is a fin moving beside us on the horizon, and though it disappears from time to time in the bright sun, at dusk, it is always there, circling. Blue moon, the second full moon in a given month, occurring almost every 2.5 years, isn't blue, but pearly as an abalone disc washed ashore above the rooftops. We shuffle out in our slippers and night clothes in time to see it break free above the tree line, almost bouncing as the trees relinquish it. I help you find it, that flood of light, with your broken eyes, and we stand here swaying with the trees, marveling. At the last blue moon, we must have been listening. We must have been learning to stand to the newest loss, your cancer finally behind us, and the Parkinson's, your disintegrating vision waiting in the wings. At the next one, for all we know, we may be gone. And so I yip, a tentative yip, and then you yip back in your crumbly voice that gives way a bit, falls back, and then my voice begins to fill out, lift into a howl, and then neighbors be damned, another howl for both of us, round and full of all the lost and broken things, lifts up in my chest, pours out of my throat, and the long high note spins all that loss into silver light. I'm losing my memory, as I guess everyone is at my age, but I feel like mine is worse. Is there a trend here? Just noticed that. So the title of this poem, remember this, is Wind. Here is the thing that nibbles at the bone, the thing you can't recall, not its sound, this tiny structure casting its shadow of fog, moving through the tunnels of the brain, making you feel in the dark for the name you were just about to grab before it snuffled away on silent feet. And soon you come to words, the thing you used last night to pluck your eyebrows, the thing we do when we say we're sorry. You learn to circumvent, the brain still cagey even in the thickening mist, the way we go around the missing words in circles as though we didn't speak the language and must gather many small words to stand for the one perfect one we've lost. And now we cannot follow a simple trail of words, how to load an app, how to get from here to Susan's house. And now, this year, more will be lost, like holes in the fabric of our created selves, until we are each a ragged scrap, a fabric flapping in the whatchamacallit, fast-moving air. Thanks. Americans in Sayulita. In Sayulita, if you lose your American pills, carbidopa for Parkinson's or insulin for diabetes, say, you will not be able to get more. There are no fax machines for your doctor back home to send a prescription, and anyway, there is no medicine to be bought. The people who live here are not treated for these diseases. They stumble and swell and vomit, expect to suffer long and die early. Dr. Chavez at the storefront clinic, arriving late in sandals and shorts, will pull up a plastic chair, sit down with you, make calls on his cell. The clinic has no phone. To someone he used to know at a hospital miles away. He will call an old friend, then a friend of that friend, a branching phone tree of acquaintances until at last he finds the needed drug, pays someone with a car to drive there on the dusty roads through the jungle, bring it back, deliver it to your hotel. Because you can pay the $50 US, yes, and also because you are an innocent, polite and clueless, a wallet full of cash, an American who must be saved. This poem is called Nepenthe, which means sleep without dreaming and without reckoning, I would say. And it's also a restaurant on the coast at Big Sur. And that's really the one it's about. But at the restaurant on the coast, having survived 3 flights of stone steps to sit at the counter along the rail on the top deck, we are overlooking the vast, blinding brightness of the sea. I am stunned by the effort it has taken, the lack of transcendence in the resulting bustle of ordinary eating and serving. We share a pulled pork sandwich, a slice of apple pie. We are mostly silent now. Our effort to be cheerful has washed us empty and clean. Finally, we stand to go, gather our jackets, bags, his slender new cane. As he comes along, carefully avoiding the tables, the feet, I stand watching the water far below jostle and swell in its enormous bowl. And he joins me, turns back to the view. "Is it mountains?" he asks. After a moment, I take his arm. We turn. We walk away. Still life. Hunched in his chair, his brown zip sweater, his eyes closed and tearing slightly with hurt, he is practicing acceptance, being at one with the pain rather than fighting with it, relaxing into it rather than tightening the body and mind against it. The Buddha says, you will have pain, but you do not need to suffer. He welcomes touch, caretaking, the warm, wet cloth on his face, his limbs, soothing his skin, his bone, muscles, sinew, heart, eyes, hands, his purpled hands. His back is scarred yellow and crimson, mottled from the latest fall into the dark door, the wall, the bedside table with its wooden corners and small flying objects, the finality of floor. My voice over his face, my hands touching him there and there, looking for wounds, my chest holding him down a while, making him wait to stand again. He is content, in fact, to lie here, me hovering above. He is practicing being one with the night. This is called Time for my daughter, Kate. She and her husband live half of the time in Slovenia, which is on the other side of the planet. So I wrote this during that period. When the magic hour slips quietly down over the yard, the bats coming out from under the eaves to snap up in full flight the slowest dragonflies, always the first wave to arrive, their mandibles full of mosquitoes. At this hour, in this place, where the air is blue as a Maxfield parish, the light is yellow, the day closing down, we, drowsy in our brown chairs under the drooping sunflowers, you are still warm in your bed, your light, fine hair thrown about you like a cloud, the dark curls of your tall man beside you on the pillows in a small house in a quiet room on the other side of the planet, the side that's turning slowly into the sun that we've just left behind, the first gray inkling just slipping into your backyard where the cat is hunkered down watching the grasshopper wake up, listening for the first hoarse, tiny call from the branches of your neighbor's linden tree. You won't be rising for hours yet, and I take comfort heading into the darkness with my glass of wine, in your safeness, your chosen life, both of us on the very same planet. And this is a rather longer poem for my son, Ben, through hiker on the Pacific Crest Trail. The way you've found your way in the world is the way I hoped for you, the silent guy, the guy with the funny, quiet one-liners, the guy in black, morphed to the guy in hiking boots, the guy with the mountain man beard who has, in fact, become the mountain man, setting out at dawn in March from Campo on the Mexican border, getting ahead of the desert heat. In your enormous backpack, you strode the desert well into April, where you took a break, came down, hitched a ride with a trail angel, and arrived begrimed and grinning just in time for my birthday party. You stood in the doorway, bemused and smiling, and people engaged you, one by one, to tell them, let them walk the trail in their mind's eyes, imagine walking day after day, endless days. You spoke more that day than in the previous 50, and then you were gone again. You lightened your pack at Kennedy Meadows, picked up snowshoes, ice axe, and micro spikes you had mailed to yourself, and doctored your blistered feet. You climbed up and up into the pale Sierra sun and slogged above the snow line and down, up again and down for miles and days and weeks, joining up with others now and then, Diggy and Squeaks and Skittles, parting, crossing paths again somewhere down the road. Trail names are given to all by fellow hikers for intuitive, sometimes mysterious reasons. I loved the one they gave you, Cool Blue. You were alone in your tent when the black bears snuffled and grunted around you in the night, and in the light, wild creatures watched you pass, but seldom showed themselves. Each tree taught you how to be slow, and every moment taught you how to be alone. At our meeting place in June at Donner Pass, you arrived walking easily as though you could walk forever. You slowed your pace for me, and we walked an hour or two. You told me how the trail was changing you, how you couldn't imagine going back. I saw how the silence had gotten inside your bones, felt how being in the trees and sky and earth made you breathe in sync with everything. In late July, crossing into Oregon, you were forced to veer from the path by fires raging in the mountains, and we waited for news, our hearts beating, that you were safe. Back on the trail, smoke rose in the distance here and there all the way to Canada. You had used up 3 sleeping bags and 5 pairs of shoes by September, when you and Ranger and Glamourpuss finished the great adventure, went down laughing into town, had a bath, ate everything on the menu, and drank champagne. When I walked with you that day, I saw that you would be a different man when you came back. You had lightened your pack again and again until you carried only what you couldn't live without. Bad children. It's not what you think. Everywhere the planet is pulling in her generous green, folding it up forever in the vast trunk of history. She is taking down the curtains of rain and giving them away to someone at another dimension who will treat them gently. She is rolling up the atmosphere with its cigarette holes and moth-eaten diatribes. And when she has packed her bags and slammed the door and left us looking at each other in silent shame, like bad children, we will say, "We didn't do it. It was someone else." And now to the poems that are really at the heart of the book, I think. Finally. Every morning now it's the big girl pants, and they are not black silk with lace, but come with voluminous white cotton. You've seen them hanging on clotheslines back in the day, functional pants for women who mean business. They mean to get things done, no allowance for pain, don't mean to spend a single minute caressing their losses. These women look straight ahead and forget to smile at children, forget to touch their husbands' hands, their old husbands wandering like children, these men who were supposed to be gods and fell, unable in their duty to protect, left these women to drop their peacock feather earrings, chop off their long, thick hair, toss their wild photos into an old shoebox, and take charge, grow up, finally, grow all the way up. I think I'm going to read the creation poem just because Richie told you about it. I hadn't planned to read that one, but if I can just find it. There it is. Creation story. On the first day, God created the earth and all the planets, and on the second day, the plants and animals of the earth, and on the third day, she was tired. It turned out the sky kept raining or snowing on all the animals, and they were cold and wet, and some of them were crabby. Some of them kept chasing and eating the others, and while she knew this was necessary, as they couldn't eat enough growing things to stay healthy, so they had to eat the others who had also eaten the growing things and get them secondhand, still God was upset. She really didn't want them killing and eating each other. On the fourth day, she created plagues and hurricanes. She caused the earth to rise up, throwing many creatures off. There were fires and floods, but still a lot of beasts clung to the earth and went right back to killing and eating and reproducing. God rested a long time. She washed her hair in a nice, clear, clean-smelling lake. And on the fifth day, she created books, so women would have something to do later when she invented leisure time. Which gave God a great idea, and on the sixth day she created time. This made life easier for the growing things to know when to seed and when to bloom, but harder for the women to get everything done. On the seventh day, God looked it all over, all the fighting and working and reproducing and spouting of ideas by some of the creatures, and she saw that it might be good or it might be bad. And she got her faux ermine cape, and she wandered away to see what else was out there. Thanks. Parting. Seeing someone off, you may have laughed. You may have waved as he disappeared into the crowd at the door of the airport, or as her car receded, her train lurched away down the track, her ship slid out of port, its wake churning, your loved one waving back from high up on an impossible deck. After the awkward or heartfelt embrace, once you had both stepped back and met each other's eyes, you may have made a false-sounding remark to cover your pain or lack of pain. You may have given a quick arm pat and abruptly fled, or he may have grabbed up his pack, his jacket, and said he'd better hurry now, and you will have seen that either that he was already gone, his mind turned to the adventure or responsibility ahead, you already behind him, a memory, or you will have noted how he ducked or turned away to hide his face, the way it kept trying to give him away, and you too will have felt the inadequacy of the parting. But there was nothing else you could have done. No direct line between the two of you beyond embrace, words flattering or glib, and both of you unable to bear it, wanting it to be over, and the long emptiness or freedom begun. The last few poems that I'll be reading are so about Charles and so strongly interwoven into our relationship that I wanted you to know that he was one of the most wonderful poets in my heart that there has ever been, and he was a very well-known, well-established poet in the area. And he has some very elegant poems that have been well published, but this remains my favorite poem that he's written, and it's a more personal nature than he usually writes. It's called For Caleb. For Caleb, who sits in my car and tells me he's not afraid. 12 now, he explains how all his friends' parents are divorced, and I think how ferociously he played soccer today, and suddenly I am afraid. I don't want it to happen, for the coming days of my absence to become a lost language. Caleb, listen. I remember nights standing by your bed before sleep, before you even knew I was possible, and I knew for the second time that I was not alone. And I remember you on the slopes, skiing when you, bending far down into a tuck as we raced for the bottom, laughed out loud in the gathering speed. And giving into it, I went with you, leaning into the wind. I will never let you go out of my life. Listen, Caleb, just as it was that day skiing down the mountain, even in full flight, a way always opens at our feet. And it did. And there he sits. We stayed close. We managed it. For my blind man. You are walking in a formless space now. No down or up, no white or black. Certainly no vermilion, no verdigris or rose. The food is shapeless on the floating plate. Its taste known, but unidentifiable. Pie or pudding, bread or chicken, tofu or fish. With great effort you rise up, stand, leaning into the light or wind or fearful thing coming. There is a chair. You sit back down. The dog below your knees is neither small nor large, but furry, dry, and warm. There is neither joy nor misery, no waking or sleeping. There is a bit of gravity. Water is good. But you are floating mostly, your lips parted, focused, trying to figure it out. You are always trying to figure it out, exhausting as it is. I arrive and press my face down onto your chest. I open your shirt. My mouth is real, not just a memory. My real lips are soft, and your skin recognizes my hands. You can picture my body young and naked. Your eyes look where my face should be, but there is nothing. Still, you are hearing my words arriving out of the nothing, and here are my knees along your flanks, my palms, my fingers solid and certain. You let go of the unknown, swim to me with all your might, the courage of your relief, my current sweeping you into a warm place, a destination, a moment's rest. Home, you whisper, home. Three more. Another kind of love. How our beauty falls away, the way our tight gold flesh goes loose and gray, hangs and wobbles. I walk you from your chair by both hands, purpled and bruised, a few small wounds bandaged but bleeding a little, to the bed where, before I place the foam boot on your foot, its red misshapen toes, I massage your long calves, pale and hairless now, a thin layer of skin stretched on a long bone. Where you were hot and electric, and my longing fell upon you, there is only the abiding warmth of a living animal. I hold you with such tenderness, astounded at your injuries, carefully tending them. Your hand tremors in my own, the hand that held me, the fingers that sorted out my straying hair, touched with such delicacy and made my body rise, unable now to find me. And so we leave all that behind for this other kind of knowledge, push through to what remains, the way we sleep, the rain, the moments we are safe, still here, and nothing hurts very much. Dance Me to the End of Love, Leonard Cohen. We see how the end is waving like seagrass in the sky, its roundelay, its accordions, all the dying songbirds flying up as you clap your bruised and scarring hands from the leafy cushions of your chair, your unseeing eyes that stay and stay and stay. You stooped and groping for the bread I slide into your hands before you ask, the birds swooping now to pluck it from the air. Finality is calling you, singing your name, and I would let go now of your hand, pass you on to your next partner, let you enter her embrace as I declared 1,000 times that we would never, I would never, but you are only a thread, a whisper. Soon I must take my chances with the vast and empty world of unrecognizable song. I who always sing while you hold me, the way we move together, how will I sing when you fly up with the birds and leave me there with a song too slow, too dark for dancing? And the last poem in the book is called Leaving. Tiny white lights in the trees or sky, like holes letting in the other world, and a young girl laughing into the face of a man she is meeting and will spend her last days with somewhere down the line. An old woman with a bowl of strawberries over by the table, her wrinkled face still, satisfied, tired. All of it moving on, wheeling like the Milky Way. She stands and leaves the bowl on the table, moves toward the door. The children run past her veiny legs, shrieking, snatching strawberries from the bowl, and at the door she turns, her hands stained with the ripe red berries, fingers sticky with juice. She backs up, backs out the door, lingering, absorbing the whole of it, the color, noise, laughter, even the wailing baby in the corner. She takes a long time leaving, but finally she's gone, and the door closes without a sound. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks to these two profound poets, Gail Rudd Entrekin, Elizabeth C. Herron. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please take a look at their beautiful books, and please raise a glass with us in the back, have a snack. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.